And welcome back. Night Flight Films explores themes of trauma, survival, and the haunting legacy of racial terror, stemming from a terrifying experience years ago. Through stunning visuals, experimental storytelling, and immersive sound design, the film takes us on a journey through the lingering impact of fear and violence. Joining us to share more is the director of Night Flight Film, Khary Saeed Jones. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I was going to say night flight. We're going to take a flight or a fight. Fight or flight. That's the
Right,
theory.
night fight. Yeah, yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Different.
Listen, Night Fight is based on a deeply personal and traumatic experience. What made you decide to turn to maybe even put the pen to the paper first and then produce a film?
Yeah, well, I mean, Night Fight is a film about racial violence, about racial
Mm.
intimidation.
Yeah,
It's a story that is kind of, I guess, it originates and kind of is grounded in my own experience. But along the way, I brought in, you know, collaborators and other black artists and historians who have had formative experiences of their own,
yeah.
that have contributed to the direction of their creative and their academic, their scholarly work.
Yeah, Carrie, if you don't mind, can you maybe touch on some of those personal experiences that
Yeah, yeah.
maybe was
So
traumatizing to you in life?
yeah, the film chronicles this experience that I had back in 2017, where I was followed by by a guy in a pickup truck early one morning, and
Mm.
before the sun had really come up. And in the film, I go back to this town and I discover that the town has, although it's kind of in many ways we could say that it's come a long way. It's a progressive space
Yeah,
today. It does have a history of racial violence and racial discrimination that is little known. But there are people in the town, and I interview some of these people who have attempted to sort of like to bring this history, and the diversity and the diverse history of the area
yeah.
to light.
What area was that? Was it in New York or in the South?
Oh, this is actually Canada.
Canada.
This is 2 hours north of Toronto,
Yes.
a town called Collingwood and Blue Mountains, right off the Georgian Bay. The sisters who I interview in the film are Carolyn and Sylvia Wilson, and their father. They've grown up without their father for most of their lives.
Yeah.
Was the first black foreman in the town, and died under very suspicious circumstances back in the 1950s.
Yeah.
And this is a history that I only discovered after I went back to the town myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So you went back to gather a lot of the information to help you put together the
Well,
film?
well, that part of the part of what the film gets into is, well, why am I going back, right? I had not, I sort of like imagined, many times, sort of like imagine my way into sort of like, well, who is this guy who followed me? Why did he follow me? And as I am preparing to go, allegedly to sort of to document, and kind of retrace my steps, to interview these sisters, to find out more about this place. I am kind of also having a question about, well, what if I were to see the guy or someone who I thought was the guy, or, what do I do with all these feelings of these mixed feelings that I have, that haven't been tied up or have not been resolved.
Yeah. And those feelings stuck with you until you put it on paper and put it in the film, right? Is that
Exactly,
one of the
right,
ways
exactly.
that you got it out of your head and got it out of your mind? But what feelings did you have at the time you were being followed?
Well, but this was a very new experience for me. I mean, to be, I don't get into it too much in the film, but the month before I was followed in Canada. I'm based here in Boston. the month before that, I had been followed, in broad daylight, by a guy, very briefly, and it was kind of an intense, few moments, but it was not did not kind of resemble what I experienced in Canada.
Yeah.
But it's these are feelings of these are a fear of uncertainty they kind of there's a feeling of kind of just being kind of plucked out of kind of obscurity.
Yeah.
And why?
Why? Yeah. You don't know where it could have gone from there,
Exactly,
with that
exactly.
following. Yeah, it's very frightening. I'm sure it's still traumatizing today. But can you talk about the blending of it being a documentary, fiction, or and experimental elements in Night
Yeah.
Flight? Is it a mixture of all of these things?
Yeah, so when I returned from Canada, this is back in 2017 after the initial incident. I kind of like bottled this up. I didn't really know. I mean, I think I told the folk,
Uh,
my family, that it had happened, but that kind of like I kind of put it away. But I would say about a year and a half after that, I began to sort of have these images, or these sort of like
hmm.
these thoughts, that were very visual, that kind of staged me in these different circumstances. I think that sort of that stem from sort of the different kind of ways that this encounter with this guy might have gone if it had
Yeah.
not gone the way that it did. So I began to sort of in private, I began to sort of stage these self portraits, these video self portraits. I did not tell my family, did not tell my friends or my loved ones, but I would say within 2 years I had kind of accumulated like a body of work that was completely private, that I had not shared. And this was the origin of the project. The project began with these self portraits, and so before there was really a documentary or really an understanding of what the film of a
Yeah.
film, I had this body of work, and what Night Fight became was an attempt to sort of really make sense of these portraits, make sense of this experience, and to figure out like how these different portraits, these different versions of myself,
Hmm.
were connected to one another.
And how did you come up with the name Night Fight? Is it something that you were fighting
It's
since that happened for how many years?
right. So this was over a number of years. I was shooting these self portraits, not all at night, but many times it was after my family would go to sleep. I would wake up in the middle of the night. I'm a filmmaker, so I did have some access to equipment. And these me sort of sorting this out was something that very much happened in the dark.
Hmm.
Happened in my own mind, and the film is in many ways is sort of a process,
Yeah.
has been a process of bringing it to light.
So it explores those themes of trauma, survival, and the haunting legacy of racial terror. Um, and it's not only in your mind, but I think you mentioned that it happens to others.
Right, and so the film, we in the film, I interview a number of friends,
Hmm.
colleagues, who have from the time they were very young, in some instances, in some cases,
Yeah.
recently, they have had these formative encounters, and not all, violent encounters. Some of them, and not
Yeah.
all, violent intimidation. In some cases, these are experiences where folk are told, what are kind of what their understanding of beauty and their understanding of art. How what is beautiful and what is not beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
That blackness is not something that is beautiful, right? They're kind of they're have these formative experiences that attempt to kind of like cut them down in certain ways, and they've had to in many cases figure out ways of sort of like kind of overcoming this, making sense of it. I would say uniformly in all cases, it's made them stronger.
Yeah.
Um, the work of sort of like of pushing past these encounters, but the fact that they happen is something that the film is that I'm very interested in exploring.
Yeah. It makes me want to call it the following. Night Fight, the following.
Yeah, yeah. There,
Yeah.
there, there, there are that is being followed, and anonymously is a kind of a is quite an experience that many people are familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is something that it that women have encountered, um, that trans and lesbian, gay folk have encountered, that obviously people of color
Yeah.
have encountered, and it is something that it shakes you.
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of people experience this, even with stalkers. You don't know what it is that they want from you
Exactly.
until they corner you, and then it's either one thing or the other. It's either a friendly stalker or somebody wanting to say something, or you remind them of somebody. I don't know, but it's traumatizing because you don't know what could have happened after this
Right,
following.
and you don't always get answers,
Yeah.
right? You don't always get answers that you don't, and sometimes it doesn't really matter why they're following you. In the course of like sharing this film at South by Southwest, we premiered last week down in Austin. There, I was I was reminded that this the guy who followed me, there were never any words exchanged, right?
So you
They
never
were
knew
just
what he wanted.
I just have this memory of these dead
Yeah.
cold eyes of him just sort of like just
Wow.
staring at me,
Yeah.
and kind of expressionless. And as a person of color, as someone who is an artist, as a filmmaker, someone who's been influenced by books and film, I'm left to kind of fill that space, that kind of that negative space with my own the own history of the own sort of like the history that I'm familiar with,
Yeah.
right?
And how do you hope audiences will connect with this broader message? Will they connect
Well,
with it?
I think that I'm hopeful that in the film, viewers will see, something that resonates with themselves. And I'm also hopeful that they are empowered or moved even to sort of to do something, right? To kind of, your imagination can do a certain kind of work and kind of paralyze you in certain ways. But to if you can find a way to have to take that energy, to take
Yeah.
that emotion, to kind of to work through it, and have a kind of an impact wherever you wherever
Yeah.
you live, wherever you work, and whatever kind of work that you do in your personal relationships, then that is something that I think can be a positive outcome
Yeah.
if we can find our way towards one.
Did the process of doing the film bring any revelations? Did it open up anything new, or remind you of anything, or correct anything in your life?
Well, as I have two sons, and we are as black parents, parents of color. We oftentimes are sort of in this position where, as they come of age, we
Hmm.
have to give them this talk about conducting themselves out in the world. This talk about law enforcement, and I also I felt like I had to also fold into that some sense of the randomness of in which people of color are oftentimes targeted. So the film is this is something I haven't gotten into in our discussion, but part of the film is also me sort of wrestling with right how to make sense of this and not pass on a kind of a traumatic experience to my son, but to figure out a way to kind of to talk to him about it in
Uh-huh.
a way that is ultimately, I think, generative, and kind of makes him, it kind of makes him it kind of enlarges him and doesn't kind of like make him and myself smaller as a result of what happened.
Yeah. Who are some of the wonderful people that you've worked with on this film?
I had the pleasure of interviewing Elizabeth Hinton, who's a Yale historian, Vincent Brown, who historian at Harvard, Greg Childs of Brandeis, Patrick Sylvain up here at Simmons University, Kelly Carter Jackson of Wellesley, whose work I think directly sort of like engaged with these ideas of the balance of sort of
Uh-huh.
like of force and freedom. And that's the title of her first book, in fact. Um, so yes,
Kendra, Kendra T. Field.
Kendra T. Field, who's actually my wife, um,
Yeah.
and my partner, and who was has been here kind of all along the way.
Yeah. Did they
Uh,
all help shape the narrative of the film?
Absolutely, absolutely. Talking with them made me, made this sort of like not a, it was an artistic endeavor. It was a project that I felt like I had to do.
Hmm.
But ultimately, hearing their own stories was something that made this very private thing, what I thought was a very private thing, something that was more community
Yeah.
centered.
Now, did you premiere already, or you're going to premiere
We had
soon?
our premiere, so 2 weeks, a week and a half ago, March 7th was our premiere at South by Southwest, and we had ultimately three amazing screenings down in Austin,
Uh huh.
and we're looking forward to future screenings. Hopefully bringing it to the New York area sometime soon.
All right, you're bringing it to the big town, bringing it
Yeah,
to the New York
well, that's
area. Come on down.
I spent 10 amazing years as a New Yorker,
Uh
so
huh.
I'm looking forward to sharing it with my folk, my New York folk.
Got a lot of people following a lot of people in New York. That's for sure. A
Yeah, there
lot
we
of
go.
following going, but for good, for good, a lot for good. From working on the He Named Malala to Lorraine Hasbury, Sighted Eyes, Feeling Heart. How have your past projects influenced Night Fight? Now, Night Flight,
Right.
uh,
So those are
Night Fight.
projects that I worked in post production on. I was one of the editors on all those projects.
Yeah,
My recent project was a collaboration with the director Jane Galooly, which
yeah.
was
So you've been
actually
doing
my
this for a while now. Okay.
yeah. So that,
Yeah.
that got into the Ferguson, the history of the Ferguson issue from a very sort of like nuanced perspective. The director is from Ferguson,
Mm.
back when it was actually an all white town. And we can and in that film and with I'm an editor on that film and a writer on that film, and Jane gets into just the long history of racial
Uh huh.
discrimination that Ferguson and the nearby town of Kinloch faced in the decades leading up to
Uh huh.
Michael Brown's 2014 killing.
So you've been storytelling and teaching for some time, huh? And filmmaking.
Yes, yes, I've been at this a while. I've got this is my first feature length documentary that I've
Uh,
directed myself, and I've got many more stories that I'm looking forward to telling in the coming years.
and you're a professor. So
I
do
am.
you teach this where you a professor at?
So I teach here in Boston at Tufts University,
Of Tufts.
Medford, go to Medford Somerville
Mm.
campus, and yeah, I work with students on documentaries, but I also teach scripted storytelling, and I that's one of the things that makes my I think makes my life full and has kind of contributed to my ability to kind of get through this project has been my the work of my students and the conversations that I have with them and my ability to kind of take some of what I'm always take what I'm working with in my own
Yeah.
work to kind of apply it to what they may be working through in their own
Yeah.
um, coursework or advanced projects.
Khary, do you get the grants or the money that you need to go on telling stories and doing your filmmaking?
I was very fortunate on this project to get the support of the Sundance Institute,
All right.
Firelight Media, which is a amazing New York-based production company and grant writing grant giving organization of the Left Foundation, Mass Cultural Arts. I've got money from Tufts, from Harvard. I've gotten money from money. It's a small project, but I was supported.
That's good.
Anytime I asked for money, anytime I applied for money, could ask for more. You can always ask for more money on these things.
Khary, that's important. You know that.
Yeah, but
Let that
I
money
did. I did.
flow.
Anytime I asked for money, anytime I wrote a grant, I got a grant on this project. So
Great. You've received grants from just about everybody. You mentioned Sundance. Um, there are a lot of people, emerging filmmakers, coming up, and they want to do the same thing. They want to be the Spike Lee. They want to do what you do. What advice would you give to them?
start now.
Start now.
There's no reason to start now. There's no reason not to start now, right?
Uh,
When I was coming up, I think that there were. I don't even think that it should have been an excuse back then. But there's always a question about like where like getting a camera or where's it going to come from, and well, if you have a camera, well, how would you edit it? No, there's there. Yeah, I think we all have the tools,
Hmm.
to make films. We all have the tools to tell stories. Now, the time is something that we have to sort of make like that. I think in the end, whether you're a professional or an amateur or someone who's even just has a dream of it, in the end, you have to make the time. You have to take the time to do the work.
Hmm.
But start now. There's no if you have something to tell. There's no reason not to hop online and to watch a video about how to make a movie, and get to work.
Yeah. And what's your website so people can follow you? Social media.
Nightfightfilm.com. Nightfightfilm.com is where they can find out more about the film. Where if they are moved to donate, they can donate. To our kind of our ongoing sort of attempts to sort of like to bring the project to a full resolution. And they can find out more about me and my collaborators.
There, Khary Saeed Jones, thank you so much for making those films. Keep up the good work. Thanks for coming on, okay?
Thank you so much, Bob.
You got it.